What if there was a sure way to know what to do? A fail-proof system that you could utilize in your life that would help you make all your decisions, your big decisions, your little decisions. And what if this foolproof decision-making tool, what if you already had access to it? This is The Art of Plenty. I'm Amy McInnes, and I can't wait to dive into this topic because I am one of those people, I do not like making mistakes. And I'm sure everybody feels this way. I'm sure most people don't want to make mistakes in their life, but it's something that when it happens to me and I do something that I'm so disappointed about the result, I struggle with that. I struggle with making bad decisions. And today we're going to talk about a tool that I utilize that has helped pretty much make every big decision that I have made probably since I was in my early 20s. I was trying to think today when I was preparing for this episode, what did I do as a kid? What was the method that I used for making decisions? Because the interesting thing about kids is we teach them things and we teach them sometimes to go against the things that they already know how to do. You know, our process of socialization and our process of growing up, we can kind of quiet some of those things. You know how kids are so incredibly imaginative and creative? That's one of those things that can kind of get worked out of them as they go through school. So I was trying to remember, what did I do? What did I do as a kid? And, you know, I can remember learning the tool of using pros and cons lists to determine what to do. But I also remember that type of decision model failing me. So I can't remember how I made decisions as a kid or what I actually utilized. I just know that when I used pros and cons list, it did not matter which side was weighted or how weighted it was compared to the other. I didn't always feel like doing the thing that the pro and con list indicated as the best decision for me. I was recently reading this book called Radical Remission. Absolutely loving this book. And I will probably do a YouTube short about it because the book really spoke to me. I read quite a bit, and this is just one of those books that I've just been really digesting and really enjoying. I think because of my own experience with cancer, but there's a whole chapter in there dedicated to intuition. And intuition is that foolproof decision-making model that I think can change people's life. So the reason why this chapter really resonated for me was for a few reasons. The first reason is I really hold on to the philosophy that within our body is the ability for the body to heal itself from ailments that are happening inside the body. Not necessarily like if you get impaled or stabbed or something, there's probably the body is going to heal, but it probably needs some outside assistance because the mechanism of injury came from the outside. But then the body takes over and does processes to help the body heal. I just really hold firm to this, that the body has the ability to do things, provided that we can create space and the right atmosphere, the right situation for the body to activate those hidden healing capabilities that it has. So the book is suggesting that this is how these people created radical remission in their life, is this understanding that the body had that. So the book really resonates with me because of that. But the other thing that really stood out in this chapter, intuition, is that the body knows why those people got cancer. And that resonated because I know when I was diagnosed, that was kind of the first thing that I really dove into is how come this is happening? Where is this coming from? Why did this happen? And it's because my brain automatically has to go there. There's the rational part of me is there must be a reason because the world must make sense. And because of that, I I just dove into it. And there's a lot of different things with cancer. I mean, practically everything is cancer causing. But not everybody who does all those things necessarily gets cancer, right? There's all these different factors at play. So in the chapter on intuition, there's this acknowledgement that the body knows the reason why the cancer is there. And secondly, the body knows what to do in order to create healing. And that just really speaks to me because, like I said, when I got diagnosed with cancer, I deep dove into where is this coming from? What happened in my life? What created the situation that this cancer could grow in my body? Now, when I have utilized my intuition, when I've utilized this practice of hearing and listening, the answer doesn't always come out all at once. I recently had some cell necrosis, like when your cells are dying. And I had a test result that was indicating that was happening. And it was pretty quick where I knew what had caused that in my body and I knew where that was coming from. But what to do about it, which is the second spot, the second part of you hear and then you hear what you need to do, is still a pretty gray for me. So even though I got that first piece of this question, the answer to that question that I'd been asking a week or so ago, I haven't necessarily got the second piece. And that's something that I would say has held true for me in regards to hearing with intuition and listening to my intuition is it doesn't all come out at once. It's often over time and then it kind of bubbles up. And I kind of take like a listening stance and because I know that it comes in drips and drabs for me, I get into a place of peace around that really quickly. I'm like, okay, I've got the first part. I know I'm going to get the second part. I don't necessarily know. So I'm just going to kind of stay open until that answer has a way of showing up. And I've been okay with not having the full picture and being able to sit with it. So what is it? What am I talking about when I'm saying that intuition is a foolproof decision-making model? What exactly is intuition and how does it present in people's lives? So I read a few things online, how other people think about intuition, because I know that my way of thinking about intuition is not the same that everybody else experiences. So I kind of wanted to get a sense of what do people talk about when they talk about intuition? And three things kind of came up consistently. One was the ability to make snap judgments or that sense of a gut feeling. And the third one was having premonitions about the future. These are all things that I've experienced in listening to my intuition. I've had all three of those. And the gut feeling piece is funny because when I talk about knowing things, I usually talk about it happening in my gut. And for me, intuition it's when there's something that I just know. And once I know, I can't unknown it. Like my conviction around whatever it is that I know is so strong that there's no way that I could deny it or question it, especially on things that really matter. For example, there's no way that you could talk me out of the reason why that I got cancer. I know it like I know the back of my hand. There's no part of me that doubts or wonders. I know that. And it does not matter what anybody says to me about it. I know that that is the actual root cause. And that's what happens with me, with my intuition, is the conviction is so strong. Now, I don't separate intuition from my spirituality. I see it almost as a kind of communication between my spirit, because I always think of intuition as a spiritual thing, not as a mental thing, not as a physical thing, and not as an emotional piece, but a spiritual piece. It's that part of me that never feels old. I don't know how else to describe a spirit but by that part that never, when I look in the mirror, I think, oh, but I look different than how I feel. And when I go about something in my life, I feel the same way that I felt in my 20s. I feel the same way that I felt as a kid. It's that part of me that is always the same. And that's the part that is where I'm hearing, and that's the part where my intuition comes from. And I think that for me, intuition is almost like a type of communication between that part of me, that spirit, and what I would say is God's spirit. So that's not the case for everyone. I know a lot of people have kind of a sense of intuition. They know what to do. They make decisions on that, but they don't necessarily think that they're tapping into God. They might articulate it as like a higher power or some type of consciousness that is outside of them or inside of them, but like a power inside of them. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to my situation and what I think is happening for me and what I know is happening for me. And that's primarily how I hear from God, is through that spirit intuition thing. Now, this really blows me away. Did you know that in our gut, we have more than 100 million neurons that are similar to what we've got going on in our brain? And the gut is the only organ that can act independently from the brain. So if our gut decides that it wants to stop digestion, it can. It does not need the brain to tell it to do it. The gut can just make that decision and do it on its own. And there's all of these different types of studies coming out that are connected to intuition and connected to what they say is like a gut brain, which is what they're talking about when they're talking about all these neurons that are happening in our gut, which is so funny because I'm sure we talked about having gut feelings before scientifically we knew that we had all those neurons in our gut. Now, there's a couple studies done with playing cards, and the body would know the cards before the rational brain would know what was going on with the cards. So they would see indications from people that were doing these studies that their palms would start sweating in a certain way. And that would happen I think it was 5 to 10 minutes before the rational brain could realize what was happening. So it's really interesting where the research is going with this, because they're linking a lot of gut health to things like anxiety and depression and cognitive diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Basically, they're saying that when your gut is not healthy, it impacts your mental health. So, for example, they're suggesting the possibility that different depressive symptoms, anxious symptoms, Alzheimer's symptoms, Parkinson's symptoms could be started in an unhealthy gut, which is really unusual to think about. And I'm excited about where this research is going. I wish it was leaning more into the intuition, but that isn't necessarily not the case. I just may not be aware of those studies. So how does utilizing intuition play out in my life? Well, I don't just use intuition for the big decisions. I use it for little decisions. So big decisions would be like, who am I going to marry? That was very much an intuition and rational decision. But the ultimate final decision around it came out of my intuition, not out of my rational, because I can rationalize things 100 different ways. And when I know in my gut, when I know in my intuition, I just know. I also utilize this with little things like which grocery store to go to. Now, I cannot tell you how many times I have decided to go to a specific grocery store that I don't normally go to or that I wasn't planning on going to. Like I'll maybe think, okay, I'm going to go Superstore today, or I'm going to go to such and such today. And then I get in the car and I know that I'm supposed to go to a different grocery store. And sometimes I get annoyed. I'm like, I don't want to go there. It's going to take me longer to drive there. The food is often more expensive. Why would I go there? But I've learned over time to just trust my gut, to trust my intuition. So I go to the grocery store that I wasn't planning on going to, but I go because my intuition is telling me that this is the grocery store that you need to go to, and everything on my shopping list will be on sale. Now, I did not look at flyers because I don't look at flyers and we don't get flyers delivered to us. And even if we did, I wouldn't get them because I don't get our mail frequently enough to know what the flyers are. And I don't have any coupon apps. Like, this information is not coming up to me anywhere through an algorithm or in print or anything. So it's not like I know what's on sale that week. And I'll get into the grocery store and I'm not kidding, every item or the item I need the most of, like if I'm really out of something, that will be what's on sale, and it'll be a ridiculous sale, like way better than the other sales in other stores. And I can often get in disagreements with myself, like I alluded to, between my rational brain and my intuitive thought. And there are times when I have talked my intuitive self, out of making certain decisions because my rational self doesn't think it makes sense. Like, for example, again, grocery store example, I'll be in the grocery store and I'll think to myself intuitively, oh, you need to buy this. And then my rational brain will be like, no, you don't. You already have it at home. You've already got your meal plan. You definitely don't need that. And I'll talk myself out of buying it, which like, why would I even do that? It's not like an item at the grocery store is even costing a lot of money necessarily. And then I'll get home and the very next day, I will need that ingredient because a kid will say, hey, I want to make this thing. Do we have any of this? And I won't have it. Or the menu plan will change for whatever reason. And that one ingredient that I rationally told myself not to buy is the one thing that we need. And then I'm back to the grocery store. This kind of thing has happened so much to me that now when it happens, I work really hard to not allow my rational self to take over my intuitive decision making, because it's not as though every decision that I'm making is intuitive. I was reading that adults make approximately 35,000 decisions in a day. And when they account for the amount of time that people sleep, we're making decisions every 2 seconds. 2,000 decisions an hour. Now, I'm sure all of these decisions I'm sure the majority of these decisions are small. Like, do I move my hand this way when I'm talking to you? Do I pull my hair to this side? Like, a lot of those kind of things are inconsequential and don't mean anything. I would be very interested to know how many decisions do we make in a day that actually matter, like that we would say matter, that are going to impact the course of our day, that are going to impact the course of our life. I guess that's really hard to know, because if you turn left instead of turning right and going a different route home, you do not know that you've necessarily avoided an accident, right? Like I think we make a lot of intuitive decisions and we don't even necessarily know that we've avoided disastrous situations on a regular basis. But with making that many decisions in a day, don't you feel that we need all the help we can get? I think in our Western world, we've really learned how to quiet and silent our intuitive, because we give so much more. We just acknowledge the rational brain and science and that type of knowledge. We just give it so much more credit than we give intuitive, because I think intuitive knowledge is much harder to measure, and it's just more gray, and it's connected to spirituality. So it kind of goes against all of the things that I think are really valued in our Western culture. And because of that, I think we have really gotten away from utilizing our intuition in a way that is helpful for us. But good news, this is something that you can actually practice. Intuition is, like anything else, a skill, and you can actually get better at it. And when I was diving into this topic, I was surprised at how many resources there are out there for building intuition and increasing intuition and leaning into it more. And then I went to the bookstore, and what do you know? It's a used bookstore that I go to. And in the self-help section, there is another book about being intuitive and the intuitive brain. And it's all around. That's always true. Once you start looking for things and thinking about things, there they are. They just pop up all over the place. But this is how I got better at listening and leaning into my intuition, because I really started honing these skills in my late teens, early 20s. It was something that I built up over time. And because of my personality and the way that I live, it's something that I slid into quite naturally. I have always given a lot of credit for that kind of, I guess, intuitive way of being and recognizing what's going on behind the scenes. There's I'm very comfortable with this idea that we may just know things. But it is still a skill that I had to hone because, like I said, my rational brain, which is also strong and opinionated at times, would take over and override my intuitive brain's decisions. So here's something that I have worked at building, and I ask myself a couple questions. I ask myself, where do I hear best? Because the process of intuitive listening is listening. It's an act of quieting and listening for answers. So I ask myself, where do I hear best? And how do I hear best? So what is the situation that allows me to hear best? Does it mean that I need to tick off all of my work things? Because if I haven't done those work things, I'm not going to be able to quiet my brain down enough in order to focus and hear something differently. That would be an answer to how do I hear best? Or where do I hear best? Could be out for a walk, could be a certain time of the day, like first thing in the morning or last thing at the night when everything's kind of quiet. Those are times for myself when I hear best. But that is the beginning of really honing intuition, is figuring out where do you hear best, when do you hear best, how do you hear best. And if you don't know, then you just try a whole bunch of random things and get in the habit of practicing it and paying attention when it works. The other piece, and I was utilizing this the other day, my husband was actually communicating this to our daughter who's 11. She had to make a decision, and he said, when you're practicing this type of decision making, it's easy to practice when there's only two choices. So if you're in a situation, and I always liken it to going up to a vending machine. Do you want this chocolate bar or this chocolate bar? So when there's only two decisions to make, it's an opportunity to utilize intuition to making a decision, because it's not like every possibility is out there in the world. It's more difficult to hear when there's no information that you're trying to hear. What I mean by no information, meaning like it's a totally blank slate, any possibility. But when it's specific, like, do I go to grocery store A or grocery store B? Do I go straight at this intersection or do I turn here? And I would just ask myself these questions all the time, and then I would practice hearing. And when you practice with little decisions like that, like left or straight, the consequences are not usually grave. It's not like the consequences that could happen in regards to, do I take this job or not take this job? Do I marry this person or not marry this person? Do I have another kid or not have another kid? Those decisions have a lot more weight and a lot greater impact on our life. So starting with the small decisions where there's only two options is a way to kind of build that intuition muscle. And then once you have practice doing it, you can ask bigger and bigger questions, and you get more comfortable trusting the intuitive part. So it's a skill that over time, it gets easier and easier. You start with the little thing, and then all of a sudden you're making big decisions like, do I buy this house? Do I sell this car? And decisions that can have a great impact in your life become really easy to make because you have practice doing the little decisions and you have history of making decisions in that way. I'm excited. I hope this is speaking to you. I hope that if you haven't thought about intuitive decision making as a foolproof decision model, that it's something that you can utilize. I'm going to link the book that I was referring to in the show notes in case you're interested in that. And I'm so thankful you're here. Hit subscribe if you're one of my regular followers and you want to make sure that you know when this show is coming out, when new episodes are dropping. It makes a big difference to me to have subscribers, but thank you so much that you would spend time listening. I'm honored that you're here. This is The Art of Plenty, and I am Amy McInnes.